All right, let's dive right into one of the most incredible and honestly mysterious things in the universe: how your brain actually builds memories. But let's start with a bit of a mind bender. Imagine you could learn to do something new. Say, get really good at a video game. Your fingers know exactly what to do. But every time you pick up the controller, it feels like the very first time you've ever played. Sounds impossible, right? Well, believe it or not, this exact paradox is real, and it's our key to unlocking how memory really works. So, to figure this out, our journey starts in a weird place. Not with how memory is supposed to work, but with what happens when it completely and totally breaks. We're going to look at some amazing cases where the mind does things you would not think are possible. This quote you're seeing here comes from a Swiss researcher, Eduard Claparade. He was describing an experiment with a patient who had Korsakoff syndrome, a condition that just devastates your memory. And what he discovered was like a ghost in the machine, a kind of memory that was working completely under the radar, totally hidden from his patient's own awareness. So how do you find it? The experiment was so simple, it's brilliant. Okay, so every day he'd greet his patients, and every single day she had no idea who he was. Then one day he tried something. He hid a little pin in his palm. When he shook her hand, she felt a little prick, was surprised for a moment, and then, poof, she forgot it even happened. The very next day, she again has no idea who this guy is. But when he puts his hand out to shake hers, she yanks her hand back. He asks her why, and she can't explain it. She just has a feeling she shouldn't. The condition she was dealing with is called anterograde amnesia. Now, this isn't about forgetting your childhood. It's about your brain losing the ability to hit the save button on any new experiences. Every moment is fresh, and what just happened a minute ago, it just vanishes. And that little pinprick experiment perfectly shows this fundamental split in our memory. See, it turns out there are at least two types. You've got explicit memory, which is knowing what. It's consciously remembering, that doctor pricked me with a pin. The patient had lost that completely. But then there's implicit memory. That's knowing how. It's that unconscious gut feeling of danger with the handshake, that learned reflex to pull away. Her brain learned a lesson, even if her conscious mind had no idea class was even in session. And this whole idea becomes crystal clear when we look at the most famous case in all of neuroscience, the man known simply as patient HM. So to treat his severe epilepsy, HM had a radical brain surgery back in the 1950s. And the good news is, it stopped the seizures. But the bad news? It left him with profound anterograde amnesia. His own words just capture it perfectly. The strange state of living in a permanent present, where the moments right before are just a total blank. But here's where it gets really mind-bending. Researchers gave HM this tricky task where he had to trace his shape while only looking at its reflection in a mirror. It's super hard. And as you can see from the chart, over 3 days, he got way, way better at it. His errors just plummeted. Yet every single day, when they brought the task out, he would swear he had never seen it before in his entire life. His hands remembered what his conscious mind couldn't. He had perfect implicit memory, with absolutely zero explicit memory of ever learning. Okay, so these incredible cases prove that the brain has these totally separate systems for memory, which, raises the big question, where are they? Well, HM surgery, the very thing that broke his memory, is actually what gives us the biggest clue to finding the brain's memory headquarters. And here it is, the part of the brain that they removed during HM surgery. It's this little seahorse-shaped structure called the hippocampus. And this was the light bulb moment. Scientists figured out that the hippocampus isn't where memories are stored forever, but it's the absolutely essential piece of machinery for creating new explicit memories of facts and events. And man, it is a busy little headquarters. Its main job is something called memory consolidation. It's basically the brain's save button. But it's also running our internal GPS for navigating the world. It helps us make sense of time, and it weaves all the different parts of an experience into one single, coherent memory. Let's look a little closer at that save button function. It's called memory consolidation. Think of a new memory like it's written in wet ink. It's fragile, it could easily get smudged. The hippocampus is the process that helps that ink dry. turning a delicate short-term memory into a tough, long-term one that gets filed away for good in other parts of the brain, like the neocortex. And that internal GPS I mentioned, it's not just a metaphor. This is so cool. Scientists have actually found special neurons called place cells that fire only when you are in a specific location. And they found grid cells that create this kind of coordinate system for your environment. It is quite literally a map of the world being built inside your head. Okay, so we've gone from these big human stories down to a specific part of the brain. Now we're going to zoom in one last time, all the way down to the level of individual brain cells to see how a memory is physically carved into the very fabric of your brain. The whole idea is built on this really simple but powerful saying from a psychologist named Donald Hebb. He basically proposed that when two brain cells are active at the same time, the connection between them gets stronger. You've probably heard it, neurons that fire together wire together. This means memory isn't just an abstract thing, it is a physical change in your brain's wiring. The modern sciencey term for this whole process is long-term potentiation, or LTP for short. This is the biological mechanism that we think underlies basically all learning and memory. It's just the process of making that connection, that synapse between two neurons, stronger and more efficient for a long time. So how do they actually wire together? Well, it's this awesome little chemical reaction. First, you get this huge burst of signals hitting the connection. All that energy is enough to pop open these special little gates that are normally locked. Once the gates are open, calcium ions flood into the receiving cell. And that flood of calcium is the crucial signal. It's like a foreman yelling, "Go." It tells the cell to strengthen this connection for the long haul. So the cell adds more antennas, more receptors, and literally beefs up the physical link to make it stronger. But of course, if your brain only ever strengthened connections, it'd just become a noisy, chaotic mess pretty fast. Forgetting is actually just as important as remembering. So the brain has an opposite process, and it's called long-term depression, or LTD. This is how the brain weakens synapses that aren't used very often, basically pruning away the unimportant connections so the important ones stay strong and clear. So, after this whole journey, from a simple pinprick all the way down to a single synapse, we're left with a pretty profound thought. A memory isn't a file you just pull out of a cabinet. It's a physical, structural change to the way your brain is wired. Every single time you learn something, you're literally re-sculpting the organ inside your head. Which leaves us with a pretty big question. Is a memory something you simply have, or is it a fundamental part of what you are?